Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into the invisible mechanics of human labor that literally keep the waste management industry running. You know, when we think of waste management, we usually picture massive landfills, complex recycling tech, or fleets of specialized vehicles. But beneath all that steel and engineering lies a foundational element that investors and operators alike absolutely must pay attention to, and that is the human workforce.
So what actually happens when the trucks just stop? It's a high-stakes question, right? And it's one that quickly turns a vital, essential service into a literal pile of problems for cities, corporations, and investors. Waste management isn't just another business. It's critical infrastructure. If an app goes down on your phone, you're inconvenienced. If waste collection stops, a city faces an immediate health, safety, and logistical crisis. This brings us to a really fascinating area of the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, or SASB framework for this industry, which we're going to unpack today.
Section 1. The Essential Workforce. Let's look at the labor practices sustainability disclosure topic to build our understanding of just how critical organized labor is here.
As the standard points out, the workforce is the absolute foundation of the industry, covering a massive number of essential workers. Because this sector relies so heavily on manual labor, from the collection routes to the sorting facilities, the sheer volume of employees makes labor relations a primary driver of operational success. And in this specific sector, organized labor plays a huge role in shaping those relationships.
Section 2. Power of collective bargaining. So, how exactly do companies create stability with such a massive, essential workforce?
Well, the primary tool is the collective bargaining agreement. And collective bargaining isn't just about hammering out wages. It establishes a comprehensive framework that protects workers' rights and secures operational stability. According to the SASB standard, these agreements act as the blueprint for the relationship between the company and the employee's organization. They dictate the whole shebang, everything from how a worker is hired and fired to the specific terms of their daily employment and their overarching rights. When both sides agree on these terms, the business runs like a well-oiled machine.
Section 3. Risks of work stoppages. This brings us to the big, crucial point. What happens to a waste management entity when these delicate labor relations break down?
Look at the stark contrast at play here. Proper labor management drives productivity and financial sustainability, but ineffective management, that's a straight shot to extended strikes, shutdowns, delays, and a whole lot of reputational risk. The standard highlights that poor communication around worker pay and conditions can easily escalate into conflicts. And in waste management, an extended strike doesn't just mean a delay on a spreadsheet, it means actual garbage piling up in the streets. That immediately triggers intense public backlash and creates massive reputational risk for the company.
Now, the standard specifically defines a work stoppage in two ways. First, you have strikes, which is an employee-led temporary stoppage to express a grievance, and second, you have lockouts, which is when the employer denies employment during a dispute to enforce their terms. But honestly, no matter which one happens, both mechanisms result in the exact same immediate crisis. The essential work of managing a community's waste grinds to a total halt.
Section 4. Tracking labor metrics. Obviously, investors need to know exactly how much exposure a waste management company has to these labor risks.
And that's where these human dynamics are codified into formal financial reporting standards under the labor practices category. There are two specific quantitative metrics we need to look at here, IFWM 310A.1 and IFWM 310A.2. Let's break down exactly what these require companies to actually disclose.
Okay, so the first metric requires entities to report the sheer percentage of their active workforce covered by collective agreements during the reporting period. The standard is very specific about how to calculate this. The active workforce is the maximum number of unique employees employed at any time during the year. Now, importantly, this includes all full-time, part-time, temporary, and seasonal employees on the payroll, but it strictly excludes independent contractors and those employed by third-party temp agencies. This percentage gives investors a crystal clear view of how much of the company's operations are governed by organized labor contracts.
Now, what about tracking actual stoppages? Well, companies must report any incident involving 1,000 or more workers that lasts for at least one full shift. This is the threshold for the second metric. The standard setters recognize that minor, localized disputes might happen, sure, but when 1,000 workers walk off the job or are locked out for a full shift or longer, yeah, that is a material risk that absolutely has to be reported to the markets.
To quantify that exact operational risk,
The standard provides this clear mathematical formula to calculate the total days idle. It's a simple but highly effective equation. First, you take the number of workers involved in the strike or lockout. Second, you count the number of days the stoppage lasted. And third, you just multiply them to get the aggregate number of workdays lost. For a massive waste management firm, having tens of thousands of days idle pop up on their ledger is a huge red flag regarding their internal labor management.
But it's not just about the raw math. Companies are also required to provide qualitative context, why the stoppage happened, how it disrupted operations, and how they fixed it. The SASB standard mandates this descriptive note. And here's a really interesting detail. They require the company to state the reason for the stoppage exactly as stated by labor. This ensures a balanced perspective in the reporting. Companies also have to detail exactly how the strike impacted their ability to collect waste, and finally, what specific corrective actions they took to resolve the dispute and get those trucks moving again.
Section 5. Sustainable Labor and Financials. Okay, let's wrap this explainer up by looking at how this all ties back to the long-term corporate bottom line.
This quote from the standard really hits the nail on the head. It perfectly summarizes that treating workers fairly is inextricably linked to maintaining a profitable, sustainable operation. You simply cannot have a financially sustainable waste management company if you don't have a sustainable, stable relationship with the people actually doing the heavy lifting. The standard explicitly links the protection of workers' rights directly to enhanced productivity.
Which leaves us with this final provocative thought. If a critical service provider can't negotiate a sustainable contract with its own workforce, how financially sustainable is the business itself? It's something to think about the next time you see a garbage truck safely and efficiently rolling down your street. That hidden machinery keeping our communities clean isn't just the engine in that truck. It's the labor agreements, the negotiations, and the respectful management of an essential workforce. Thanks for joining me on today's Explainer, and keep questioning what drives the vital systems all around us.